So if overlapping action refers to the parts of a character or an object that are moving at different times, what does secondary action mean? Secondary action is really different action on a character that's happening along with the character's main action. Now it sounds similar to overlapping action, but I'll explain it like this. If a character is talking, his face and mouth shapes are the main action that's being animated, and his hands moving around in gestures and things like that, they constitute secondary action. So really, it's action that's not controlled or affected by the main action, as is in the case of overlap and follow-through. Think of it as additional action on a character, action that adds to or enriches the scene. In the sense that it adds to or enriches a scene, the golden rule of secondary action is that it should never be so big that it overtakes from the main action or distracts the viewer's eyes to the extent that they get confused about what's really happening in a scene. Remember always your primary directive. It's to tell the most important story point at that particular moment. That's basically your job as an animator, as a visual storyteller. If you can underscore or embellish that story point with nice secondary action, then all the better. But it shouldn't be at the expense of the story point. Here's a roughed out example of secondary action adding to or supporting a scene. What I've got here are a couple of frames of a walk cycle, the keyframes more or less. So obviously the walk here is the primary action. But let's say it's an angry walk, that the point of the scene is that this character is mad as hell and he's stomping angrily towards someone. Well then, if we add in action of him shaking his fists up and down like this as he walks, this then is the secondary action. It demonstrates and adds to the emotion of the scene. So secondary action is quite a broad term, and it can be applied to a lot of what's going on normally in a scene. It can be as subtle as a few movements. It doesn't have to be big and sweeping. Up next, I'm going to go over one of the most successful formulas for animating. It's kind of a three-part approach to getting any action accomplished so that it reads clearly no matter how complex. And that's the good old three-part formula of anticipation, overshoot and settle.